Good morning. Welcome to today's class. My name is Jon Witt, and this is a Hatha-based class. I use classic and contemporary techniques if you've never taken my class before. So this class will be mostly, all of it will be on the floor. So there's good practice, whether it be the floor or a wall, many good ways of practice, but some people have a hard time getting up and down. So this class will be using breath, and I'll be helping you twist and helping with extension. So last week's class I was working more on compression, so this will help in the opposite direction. So you don't necessarily need a really deep back bend to have a good life, but the back bends that I'll be using, they'll be layered that eventually you'll be able to extend more. So if you've taken this class before, thanks for coming back. I hope the classes are helping build better practice. And if you have ever any questions, you can always reach out to me. If you are able to donate, all these classes that I teach online are donation based. So to donate, you can donate through Venmo or PayPal, and it's Jon Witt Yoga. And there's other ways to make payment if you would like to contribute to my cause. I'm helping people who do not have jobs at these times. It's unfortunate, but I'm happy to provide free yoga for people that need it or cannot afford it. But if you can make a contribution, it helps me help others. So I'm going to start in a seated position. You don't have to sit like me. You could sit on a higher surface. So to sit on a higher surface, you could sit on a block. If you have only one block, it could be the highest level. It could be 2 blocks. It could be a stack of books. So what I'm doing is I'm just having the block in between my feet, and I'm hugging my feet in. You have very tight legs. Your legs could be apart like so. Say this is not a good position. There's so many different poses that you could sit in. To get full flexion of the knee is I think a great thing to achieve if you haven't achieved that yet. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be hugging my feet into the block, and then I'm just going to do some gentle exercises for your neck, and then eventually we'll get onto the floor and we'll be doing some breath work, but then we'll do some twists and more core stability. So I'm just going to look over the right shoulder, and as I look over the right shoulder, you don't have to be in a static position. I mean, you could be moving the head to get it to be, I guess, more fluid. So when I tell people that they turn their head, there's this point that it stops. So if your head is not moving as well as the structure of the neck isn't moving as well as it could, what you could do is just not twist as much with the head, and that'll help. That'll help a lot in terms of being able to turn the head more. I'm going to turn the head over the left shoulder, and the same thing applies as, if I'm turning my head all the way, it'll feel like it's locked, and it shouldn't feel locked up. It should feel actually quite nice to turn the head. We all need this. Riding a bike, driving a car, just simply walking. If I'm changing my direction, no matter what it is, I'm always looking over my shoulder so that I don't get run over by anything or hit by anything. So just take a couple deep breaths. Breath can be in and out through the nose, which develops more heat. If you're a hot person, you can certainly breathe in and out through the mouth. There's nothing wrong with breathing in and out through the mouth. So you could bring the head down, and then as I'm bringing the head down, this is more, it's more flexion. So the neck is flexing, it's creating more space. And then I'm going to look forward, and then I'm going to look up. So maybe your head doesn't lift up as high as mine. You could always look forward and then look up again. It's moving. Things are moving even though you're static. So the tissues are moving, the bones are moving. You'll get more extension through the front of the body. More isn't necessarily always better. So then I'm just going to bring the head back into a neutral position. So just circle the head in a circular motion a few times to the right, and then a few times to the left. And it doesn't have to be the speed that I'm going at. and then I'm going to bring it back into the center. So that can make you a bit dizzy, and if it does, right, you could just sit still. You don't have to do what I'm going to do next. But I'm going to move my head in a figure 8 position, and it'll help mobilize the outside of the neck, more so than the circles. So it could be another layer to this. So I'm lifting the head to the right, and then I'm bringing the head down, and then I'm circling to the left, and up, and then to the right, and then to the left, and then back up. And with these, you don't have to obviously change the directions. You're getting all the ranges of motion. I guess we could start down and go up, but it's really the same thing. So as I'm moving the head in space, there might be some clicking or cracking or popping, and that is okay as long as it's not irritating you or it's really, really painful. So just a couple more of these. So up and down, and this could be really slow. It doesn't have to be my speed. And then I'm going to bring it back into the middle. So I'm going to have my hands on the side of my head, and I'm going to move my head laterally. So the hands will help in moving the head. If you're in front of a mirror, this can be very helpful to move the head like this. And then as it gets easier, the hands can be further away from the head, which will help, moving the head as it is, because this can be really difficult for people. Not so much like it's just, when are you ever doing that? We're never doing that. So I'm going to come onto a lower setting in my block if I can. So it's just going to add more leverage into my legs. I sometimes pull the skin back on my knees, so if I feel a lot in my knees, but we could, again, stay high. It's just the deeper fold will allow more tension out of the legs. You have a history of running or weight training, athletics. This is probably one of the best positions to sit in for recovery, restoration. So I'm going to come off of the block, and then when I come off of the block, I'm going to bring my legs in a forward position, and we're going to get back down on the floor, and we'll do some light stuff, but we're going to get into breathing, and the breath will help support. You want more energy in your life. You want to feel more vigorous. There's a few techniques that I really like in terms of breathing. The breath work that I'm going to use today is inspired by a gentleman, Wim Hof, who's been incredibly popular over the years. Something that I've adopted last couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, and it's anything that's really popular I'm willing to try in terms of practice, because maybe there's something to it. So I'm never like, oh, this one technique is the best, and so I'm always willing to change my ways if there's a better way. And he has world records of swimming underneath water, like icy water. So not that you want to do that, but it can really be a amazing breath technique. I'm only going to do one round in the beginning, and we won't do any retention, but it's given me the ability to retain my breath for about 6 minutes comfortably. It takes about an hour of practice for me, or half an hour, to get to that level, and I don't always do it every day. So I'm going to come off my legs, and when I come off my legs, I'm going to have my knees bent, and then when I have my knees bent, I'm going to have my hands just out in front of me, and I'm going to roll back. So this is something that we did last week, but as you're rolling back, you may need more padding for your tailbone, your pelvis. So as I roll back into this position, I'm holding it as well as I can, and then I'm going to come down, and then as I come down, I'm just going to have my knees bent. I'm going to do some things for your neck and your shoulders before we do the breathing technique, just to kind of move you around a little bit more. So I'm taking the block straight up over my chest, I'm squeezing in, and then as I squeeze into the block, I'm going to take the block forward, but it's very easy to lift the lower back off the floor with this, and you want to keep it down. Not that you're forcing it down, but you're bringing it into this more of a tuck position, and that'll help with your lower back, but it'll help stretch up the front of the body. So take it up again, just one more time, squeeze into the block. As you squeeze in, bring the ribs in. Any range of motion that you feel tight in, you could just hold that statically. And then as you get more flexible in the chest and the shoulders, you'll be able to take the arms more overhead. My head is down, if you did not know. And then I'm going to take the block up. And then as I take the block up, I'm going to take my feet off the floor. I'm going to keep my abdomen in. And then I'm going to bring my feet down just out in front of me, but I want to hold the tension in the front of my body. I can do this with no tension, and you just won't get stronger from that. So I'm bringing my feet down, great, and then I'm bringing them up. So if the block gets kind of heavy or whatever, you could just bring it down and not use that. But if you want to add more to it, I'm going to take the block overhead like we were, and then I'm going to bring the feet down out in front of me and then back up. So bringing it down. You could hold this, which is more difficult to do. You could take it up. And we'll do 3 more. So bringing it down, holding, taking it up, bringing it down, bringing it up, and then bringing it down. So take the block up and then hold the block with just the right hand and have the left arm out to the left. And then I'm going to press up and I'm going to try to keep the block over my shoulder the whole time. So when we roll to this one side, we'll roll up if we can. So I'm going to roll to my left, and maybe this is as far as you can go. So you don't have a lot of strength or flexibility. This is a good start, right? There's nothing wrong with this. But as I add more strength into my abdomen, I might be able to sit up more, right? Sitting up into what eventually can be a Turkish get-up. So I'm going to come to my left elbow. I'm going to go to my left side. So I'm slowly coming back down, and then I'm on my back. So I'm pulling in with my left side. There's too much weight on my left side, I won't be able to come up. So you have to add more strength to get yourself up. And let's say you're using some momentum to get up. I don't think it's bad, but over time, you want to eliminate that. So I'm back down, and then I'm going to go over to my right side. So my right leg is straight, my left leg is bent. Because I don't have a lot of room, my right arm is kind of not off to the side, which is okay for me, but it's easier if the arm's up to the side, it's more effective. So I'm pressing through. As I come to my oblique on my right side, maybe this is all that I can do, right? But I'm going to come up a little bit more, not from the use of my arm, but from the strength of my abdomen. And then I'm going to curl my back, which is flexion, and then back into the elbow, back down, nice and slow. And there might be like you falling a little bit, that's okay. Like I said, maybe you're not coming all the way up. So I'm going to roll to my right again, contract through my right side. As you contract through the right side, keep using that to come up. And then as you come up, you can press through. And this could be a weight eventually. So I'm squeezing into the block with the left hand. I'm going to the right elbow, slowly coming to my right side of my lower back, then to my mid back, and then my upper back, and then my shoulders, and then all the way down. And then you could, so you really like that, you could do more of that, right? But this is where we're going to get into the breathing. So with this breathing technique, you don't have to breathe in and out through the mouth, but I find it easier to do this technique. That's, I use classic breath work, like yoga techniques, and it's through the nose. But with this, it's a deep inhale, kind of a long inhale, and it's a short exhale. And we'll try to go for about 40 to, something like that. That's about the number that I use, 40 to 50 for each round. And then that's when that's when I hold my breath, but I'm not going to do that. Maybe as I introduce this to people, then we'll get into retentions. But I really only do that if I'm observing someone, because people can pass out. They could, it's very unlikely, but it could happen. So if you ever get dizzy from it, just stop the rounds and just relax, right? And just relax, enjoy it. but it's a great technique. Really makes a big difference in how energetic you can feel, and you'll feel much stronger from it. So just swallow a couple times, and then if you're a person that's breathing through the mouth, you may get really dry in the mouth. So you could always swallow a couple times, right? And that'll help. So we inhale, and then a short exhale. Inhale, inhale, short exhale, inhale, short exhale, inhale, 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 exhale, and just swallow a couple times. It's 24 reps. Again, we'll try to go for about 45. We'll inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, short exhale, inhale, 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 exhale. When you can swallow a couple of times, it's 36 reps. Inhale, exhale, 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 inhale, exhale. And you can take a couple swallows, and we're going to do about 3 more rounds, and we'll retain. I know I said we're not going to retain, but we'll retain for about 30 seconds. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And then you're just holding. exhale. And just take a deep inhale. And then exhale. And not that the retentions are so important, but they kind of are. It makes a big difference, but I know some people get really anxious and it almost creates hypertension. So it's not always great for everyone. But if you're like, wow, it was really good and I like that, you could easily hold your breath for a minute and then eventually upwards and onwards. So we're going to go back to that sit-up again, and I just want to use it as a guide because you can see the difference in how strong you can feel. So take the block in the right hand again, reach to the left, have the left arm straight, roll to your left side, press it up, continue to use the strength in your abdomen, and come up. So maybe, especially if you don't have a lot of strength, it's easier to see if the breath did help you. So slowly roll back onto your back. One more time, we're going to roll to the left. Keep lifting up, come up halfway, and then back to the left. This is, especially if you have back pain, the way that I'm sitting up, it's much easier on the spine than, say, a classic sit-up, right? Right leg can be straight, left leg can be, sit-ups can be okay, but not for everyone. So press up through the block on the left hand, roll to your right side, keep using strength on the right side, and sit yourself back up. Like I said, maybe you're not coming all the way up. Contract through the right side of the abdomen, go to the right elbow, slow, all the way down, and then back over to the right, roll to your right. Again, not really that important to sit up all the way, but if you want to, there's benefits to it, right? So I'm going to roll back to my right elbow, roll back onto my back, and then as I roll back onto my back, I'm going to have my block off to this. Actually, I'll have the block in between my legs, so squeeze into the block. And these are rotations, so they're similar to what we just did, but it'll help with rotating the body. So my right arm is going to reach for my left hand. So I don't have a lot of space on my right side because of a wall, but your arms are out like a cross. So you're going to reach up over to the right side and then roll onto your back. And then I'm going to reach through my left arm over to my right hand, but because again, I don't have the space, I'm not reaching all the way over. So I'm really, if you don't have a lot of space, you could reach with the elbow, which is just as effective. I'm going to roll back onto my back. I'm going to reach through my right hand. It's actually, as I'm doing it, the elbow can be more progressive, so you can reach through the elbow, right? So roll back onto your back, roll to your right side, reach with your left hand or elbow to your right side, roll back onto your back. Use the strength of your abdomen, rotate to the left, roll back onto your back, rotate to the right, and then roll back onto your back. And then what we'll do is just take the block off to the side, bring your knees into your chest, and you can roll up into a seated position. So as I'm rolling up, just going to have the legs in a cross position. So my legs are crossed, and I'll take my left hand to the left, and I'm going to reach my right hand to the right, and then I'm just exploring moving forward in space, or in the middle, or to the right. And this will help with, the extension of the body, like side bends. If you've taken my class before, are much easier than twists, but they all, they work together to help you. So you can take the right hand behind the head and then just lean the head back in space. And then what I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, you could stay up on the hand, but I'm going to get to my left elbow and then I'm going to come up. So I'm coming down for a moment, and it's okay if the right hip comes off the floor, and then I'm coming up. One more time, I'm going to come down if I can, and this will just add more leverage into the spine and into the rib cage, possibly the hip for you. Then take the right arm out to the right, and then bring yourself back up, and then recross the legs. As you recross the legs, you're going to take the right hand out to the right side. As you take the right hand out to the right, and my left arm is out to the left, I'm leaning forward, or I'm in the middle, or I'm kind of moving back. And it's exploration. So you're trying to find, in my opinion, either the easiest angle, right? If you're really struggling in your body, that's a great angle to find. And then as you develop, it can be more progressive angles, right? So the hands out to the side, the head can be down. I'm going to take my left hand behind my head, and then I'm going to move back in space. So as I move back in space, it's just a way of developing the left side of the body. But it could be out to the side the whole time. But I'm going to get to my elbow again, my right elbow, and then I'm going to lift it up. And then when I come down, use the strength of your abdomen. Not that that's crucial, but it'll make a bigger impact in the way that you're stretching your body. So take the elbow up, bring the elbow down, take it back up, and then bring it down. One more time. Lean back in space. Take the left arm out to the left and bring yourself back up. So have your hands beside you or just underneath the shoulders, and push through the hands and lift through the chest. Just move the weight around a little bit. So if you had something going on in your hands, your wrist, know that you don't have to come up. But I'm moving side to side to kind of adjust the hands, the wrist. So if I'm a person that wants to come up, it's a way of flexion of the wrist and the hand. So I'm going to lift the hips up off the floor, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to move kind of side to side just to adjust the hands, the wrist. So I'm moving around the circumference of my hand, and then I'm moving forward if I can, and then back. So the moment I come forward, it's going to be more of a stretch in the shoulders and in the chest and in the back, right? And then I'm going to come back, and then one more time I'm going to come forward to just my shoulders, and then just bring your hips down where it's comfortable for you. If I'm forward a little bit or a lot, there's more of a stretch. Not that you have to go as far as I am, but if you want to, you certainly can. So I'm coming forward with my legs, and then as it gets easier, I can progressively move my hips more forward towards the direction of my feet. So it's not like you have to get this far and do it, but it'll certainly add more stretch into your back. Which is a great pose I did last week, is plow, right? But this will help adjust the shoulders, which will help with back bending. So I'm going to come back with my feet, and then when I come back with my feet, I'm going to move my hips back in space. And then as you move back, just pull the legs in, wrap the arms around the legs, and push the knees out into the arms. So as you push the knees out into the arms, you could look up, just simple extension. And you can look forward, you can look over the right shoulder, you can look over the left, and then as you're kind of off to the side or back into the middle, is what we'll do is we're going to separate the knees and come onto the knees. So I'm going to sit on my knees, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit my hips. Now you can't sit back like I am. You'll probably need something a bit like a blanket or a pillow to sit on. So I'm moving my hips to the left, kind of like a mermaid. You can think of it as a mermaid position. Now if you're really tight, you're going to look something like this, right? Which is okay. But over time you can sit where you're more upright, and this is eventually a yoga position. But I'm just here passively, more specifically to adjust the hip and the QL, which will help with twisting. So just here 30, 60 seconds. But you'll find that when hip is most likely tighter, and this is a great way to help balance out the musculature around the pelvis. So I'm going to lift myself up, and then I'm going to carry my hips to the right. As I carry my hips to the right, then, like I said, you could be off to the side. So if you have really tight extremities of the lower body, right, but when we were doing that side bend where our legs were crossed, this is I think, a more progressive way of targeting the QL. So I'm just here, hands are reaching for my legs if I can. You don't have to be perfectly squared or anything like that for like a photo. It's just, the more I move my weight over my pelvis, the more of a stretch it is. The more I lean to my right, the easier it is, and that's okay, right? So take a couple deep breaths here, breathe in, breathe out, and then you can come up. And then when you come up, we're going to take the legs back into that forward position where the knees are bent. My hands are just underneath my shoulders. I'm going to press with my hands. I'm going to lift my hips. The more you adjust the hips, the easier it'll be to extend. So that has a big part. And it depends on the back bend. Like if you get into overhead back bending, like in yoga we call it wheel, in gymnastics they call it bridge. It's a big part of that is shoulders, shoulder extension. So bring the hips down. As you take the hips down, I'm going to take my legs just neutral, but I'm going to take my left foot outside my right hip, and then I'm going to step my right foot over my left knee, and then I'm going to have the block behind me where I'm reaching for the block, and this is more for your upper back and your shoulders. So like I said earlier, if you twist all the way, like say you're in a full twist here, probably is going to be better for you to not twist as much as say I am. But if it's easy, as it gets easier, you can move the block further and further away from you. Not that that's better, but it will be more leverage. So move the head back in space. Really targets the outside of the hip. My left leg could be straight out in front of me. So if I couldn't be in a double fold of the knees, know that your left leg could be straight out in front of you. And then you're going to turn forward. As you turn forward, you can undo the legs. And as you undo the legs, you can take the right foot outside the left hip. And then the left foot is over the right knee. And then you're just turning, twisting to the left. You could certainly twist in the other direction as well. But I'm going to take the left hand back behind me. And then as I take it back behind me, I'm going to stretch the block forward, or away from me. As I'm moving the block away from my shoulders and my torso, I'm trying to lift up away from my hips. So take 3 deep breaths. And as you're twisting, just think of the separation. You're getting more and more space through the shoulders and through the upper back. Right? But you could very well be sitting on something. So if this is really tight for you in the hips, we could sit on a higher surface. So if you used a bolster, right, you want it in probably the most narrowed position, so that you can get your foot around the bolster, right? A block is obviously smaller than a bolster. So you can look over the left shoulder, lift yourself up in space, and then you can turn forward and you can release the arm and the leg. So come into an all four position. And as you're in all fours, have the hands just underneath the shoulders, push with the hands round the spine into a cat stretch, and then look forward, look up. You can back bend. Exhale, round your back, push through your hands, your fingers, your knuckles. Look forward, look up. You can back bend, and then you can finish in a rounded position. So just have the hands turned out a little bit and move the weight side to side. So the reason why I'm not having people on their hands in a class like this or so often is because I know some people can't do plank. So you're still getting stronger in an all four position. It's just much easier. Like crawling is a great exercise to use, but in all fours it's obviously a stationary position. So come back into the middle. And what you can do is just bring the back of your right hand on the floor. So this is the hard part of your hand. It could be also turned towards the opposing hand, the left hand. And I'm just opening and closing my hand, right? Again, I'm using this as a build-up to eventually get people onto their hands if they could not. Then I'm going to turn the right hand out, and then I'm going to bring the back of the left hand on the floor, and I'm going to open and close the left hand. So when you're making a fist, you'll notice that it stretches out the hand, the wrist more. You could open and close, because it can be a lot, making the fist as we are, and then turn the hand back into the middle. So come down on the elbows. As you come down on the elbows, lift the knees off the floor and tuck the pelvis underneath you so that you're in more of a hollowed position as you're in plank on the forearms. So push solidly through the center of the forearm. Keep the ribs in. Breathe in and out, and maybe you're already down. Right? If I find that I'm getting a lot of tension in my shoulders and my neck, in my opinion, it makes sense to come down. But I would do a little shorter holds. You can come down with the hips, and then shorter holds but more sets. So look high over the right shoulder. Look high over the left. Right, look center, and then what you can do is come down. Have the hands underneath the shoulders and come up into a low cobra, but keep the tucking of the tailbone down and lift yourself up some of the way. Move yourself forward in space. Move your ribs down. I'm going to come up some of the way and then forward and down. I'm going to come up again. Moving forward and down. And then if you do want to come up higher, you could come up into a higher position. So you can bring yourself up. As you come up, what I'm going to do is bring my legs closer together. As my legs are closer together, it'll bring a greater influence in getting the hips down. Not that the hips have to be completely down, but the more the hips are down, the more traction you get into the lower back. And that's, with back bending, that's usually what people overdo. They're going to get too much pressure into the lumbar. So take 3 deep breaths, whether you're low or you're high. Legs, again, don't have to be sealed together, but you'll feel more leverage in getting them closer together. And then you can bring yourself forward and down. And then as you come down, come up onto your hands and your knees. And have the toes tucked. As you have the toes tucked, have your blocks close to you in case you need them or use them. Is you're going to sit back on the feet. So I know this can be a lot for people. So if it's too much for you, just move back as much as comfortable that you can handle. And then what you could do is come forward, right? If you're a person that's able, you could sit upright. And even the most able person will most likely lean to one side, and that's going to be the more flexible foot, right? So you can kind of measure how you're distributing your weight, and that can help you with being in a position as we are. So what I'm going to do is come forward, and then I'm going to untuck the toes, and I'm going to sit back onto the feet. So again, the block could be in between your calf muscles and your hamstrings and your hips. It's not like a necessity or, super important to sit back this far, but over time, you certainly can. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and then I'm going to sit on the block where I'm on the second level. So I'm going to do this a couple times, just coming up. So some of you may not want to do the back bending that I'm going to use, but it's something that you could use. So I'm sitting here. If I don't want to back bend, I just want to sit upright. This is still extension, just like Shavasana or lying on your back is still extension. But I'm going to press through my feet and try not to use inertia, but I'm going to lift my hips up, which will help with extending the hips. So if you have a lot of tightness through here, that's the importance of lunging, lunging or warrior type of position. So I'm going to sit back onto the block, and then I'm going to come back up. And then as I come up, I'm going to tuck the toes again. Now the block, you could set up the block where it's on the highest level or even make a big stack. But I don't think it's really that important to get back and to touch something. It's just something that could be a target to get to. So I'm going to, just for the sake of the video, is I'm going to have my heels lifted. I'm going to turn through my body. And like anything, you really want to see how much leverage you need. Like you might be like, oh, this is great. You know, I'm just twisting a little bit to get to this side. I want to go up. I don't want to just get back and go into my lower back to get here. You could always test like how strong you are in your glutes. And most likely if you're using your glutes, there's some tension in your hamstrings to be here. But I'm going to turn and I'm going to reach for the foot if I can. And then as I'm, you know, I could look to the foot or I could look up, right? But I'm all this time, I'm really trying to lift up in space. So I'm doing it more statically, but you could go up and down, right? You don't have to hold it exactly, but it's so specific in adjusting the upper back. Then you can bring yourself back up and then just come back onto the block. Give yourself a little bit of a break. So if that was a lot to twist and to turn, you know, that's why I'm doing this. But I find with many people, especially if you're finding yoga later in life or just stretching later in life, is that it's so hard to extend. But the rotations will greatly reduce the stress in the lower back. So I believe it's a better way. Not to say that you couldn't go back symmetrically. You certainly can do that. But for most people, it's going to be very hard to reach back, and it'll be also really hard on your lower back. So that's why I prefer the rotational back bends. So I'm going to come up onto my feet and my knees, and I'm going to rotate through my left. And then as I rotate to the left, I'm going to, you know, think that it's the shoulder that's touching the floor, the left shoulder. Think it's the right shoulder that's touching the ceiling. So it's really using gravity to your advantage. You know, like I'm up in this extended hip position, but then I'm turning, and then as I'm turning, I'm really manipulating my upper back, which most likely for most people is very constricted, right? It can be very tight. So I'm reaching back for the foot, but you don't have to. I could be looking up. You could come into this and out, and that's, you know, and typically in classic yoga approach is like a big no-no, but I think it's actually a very good thing to do. Like, so if, let's say I couldn't go back, right, just come back and sit on the block. So let's say I couldn't go back, you can go back and it's like a lot for a couple seconds, but then you could come out and you could relax, you could go back into it again. So it's not like all or nothing. You can slowly work into a deeper range of motion, which I think is beneficial for people. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to back bend anymore, but what I'm going to do is try to sit a little bit lower, and then as I sit lower, I could sit on the block or I could sit in between my feet. So not that you have to sit as low as I am, but there's more manipulation in the feet. If you have a classic background in yoga, this is good. But what I'm going to do, one last thing, is I'm going to be on my blocks with both hands, and I'm going to press up where my knees come off the floor. But I'm trying to keep the weight in the feet. And then I'm moving my feet, my heels closer together, and then I'm just moving them out. I'm not really concerned or so bent out of shape, so to speak, in getting my feet together, but it adds more leverage. And then what I'm going to do is come down off of the knees, and I'll bring my legs off to the side. So I'm going to come into a seated position where my legs are forward, and I'm just going to circle the feet in a circular motion. So just getting the feet to circle around, and then I'll circle around the opposite direction. And then pointing and flexing the feet, just to adjust the feet in case they were, or the knees, you know, it can be really knee heavy. And then go back to having the knees bent, have the hands underneath the shoulders, press through the front of the hand, and lift the hips up off the floor. And then as you lift the hips up, I'm kind of using this as like a test or a measure. So maybe you can see the difference. I certainly feel it's much easier. So I'm going to move my hips forward towards my feet, and then I'm going to move them back, and then I'm going to move them forward, right? And just kind of feel how you hold your weight in your hands. And again, if this hurts, certainly don't go beyond that. Like, there's a big difference between good pain and bad pain. You know, if it's like, you know, it just isn't really helping you, and that can be the case, don't come as far forward as I am. But then I'm going to move my hips back in space, and then what I'm going to do is take my knees over to the right side. So I'm in a 90-90 stretch, and I'm going to reach my left hand back for my left leg so that more weight is in the left hip. And then as you're bringing more weight here, really helps to rotate the femur in. And it's, you know, because it is a right-handed world, the left side sometimes is more restricted. Most often it is for people. So this can be really helpful in getting the thighs to rotate in and out. So you'll see which side's more afflicted. So I'm going to have my hands beside me on the floor, and I'm going to extend from my belly. I'm moving my belly forward in space. And as I move my belly forward in space, it's to adjust the right hip. So this is a much easier variation of a pigeon. Some people have problems with the front knee. So a closed knee position could be used. An open knee position could be used. It's just a matter of what's actually more comfortable in the knee, because you're adjusting the hip, you're not adjusting the knee here. Sometimes the knee needs to be elevated on the back leg. So if you have really restricted internal rotation, the default is the left knee, and that's what can hurt. But I'm gonna take my arms up to the side and come forward. Not that this is better. And I'm gonna bring myself up. I'm going to take my knees up and then go over to the other side. Just for the sake of viewing, I'm going to take my knees to the left. So as I take my knees to the left, it doesn't have to be a perfect 90-90, right? But my hands are reaching back for my right leg. So both hands are back, and this could be various things. Like, you know, you could go further than what I'm doing. There's really no, you know, end to this. Like, there's other greater possibilities, right? So as I'm here, I'm just trying to feel the weight. You can certainly feel like discomfort or sharp pains, and that's what I would avoid. You know, I wouldn't put myself in situations if that was the case. So I'm going to come forward with my hands, and then as I come forward, I want to lead from my abdomen. I want my pelvis to move forward. As I come forward with my torso, I'm not really concerned with how low I get. You know, that it's a lot of people compensate with the upper body to get lower, and then they're really kind of kidding themselves how much flexibility they have in the hips. So I'm going to take my arms up to the sides or behind me because I have a wall to my left. So when I come forward, I'm leading again with my belly. I'm leaning with my sternum, trying to get myself more forward, right? As I'm forward, as I'm, you know, if I'm down, and then I'm going to come back up. And then when you come up, have the feet together and the knees wide. So just have your legs in a wide position. If you can, push your feet together and generate more width between your legs. So just get your legs to push out. As you push your legs out in space, this is, you know, for many people, the insides of the thighs into the pelvis is very restricted. So it's not that it has to be incredibly open, but all these hip type of positions can most certainly help the function of your spine. So I say this often to people. It's like as you're adjusting your hips, you're adjusting your upper body, you're adjusting your spine. It's not just, it's lower body beneficial, right? There's more to it. And then I'm going to bring my right hand on the inside of my right thigh. I'm close to my knee and pushing into it, and I'm resisting that. I'm lifting up, and then as I'm lifting my leg into my hand, I'll feel more space in the hip. So I'm getting more space into my hip, into my lower back. So a couple deep breaths. And then I'm going to take my right hand off of that, and then I'm going to bring my left hand into my left thigh. I'm going to push into the thigh. I'm going to resist. resisting. Take a couple deep breaths here. And then I'll bring my left hand down and I'm going to push my legs apart. So getting my legs to move apart. If you've never done this up against a wall, then you could press down with both of your hands at the same time because the wall will keep you up and leverage the hips. But if I'm not up against the wall, then I'm using just the hands independently, right, which will adjust the hips. And then as I'm here, I'm just going to hold onto the big toes and generate more width through the knees, through the thighs. I'm pulling up on the feet, right, a bit, and I'm pressing my legs laterally, right? And again, if you have more than enough flexibility, this stuff isn't really necessary at all. It's just if you have tight hips, it makes a difference. It'll certainly make a difference. So just have the legs in, push the knees out into the arms, right? Lift up through the spine. You could look up, right? And then you could look forward and you could relax. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a fish pose just to kind of continue on with the back bending. So you don't need to be on a high level. You can even roll up your mat. So say you don't have a yoga block. Roll up your mat, make it really dense, and then that would sit just underneath the shoulder blades like a bra strap is, just underneath there, and then you'll be able to extend over. You prefer bridge with the block, you could do that. If you wanted to do like more forward bending or whatnot, you could do that, right? But I'm going to come over the block with my upper back on the second level. So if I go to a higher level, right, I could have the block set up, but you could also have it in your hands to set it up. So when you go back, you might just want the block on the highest level, and that's perfectly fine, right? It's much easier. Try not to, especially if you get knee pain or back pain, try to get the legs more neutral. So if you have one or both feet, you could put something outside of the feet, like a piece of furniture, or you could put a yoga strap around your legs, and then that'll get the legs to be more straight, and then it won't compensate you when you lie down, and it'll help you with, say again, you have knee pain. But as you're here, let's say the block still isn't high enough, right? You could use your hands to support your head. You can get creative. But the higher level, there's more extension. So another way to modify this is you could have your hands underneath your hips. And this is really nice for the hands. Separates the bones of the hands. So the hands get kind of, they get stiff. You have arthritis in your hands. It's good to, because they just get kind of constricted through the knuckles. So with the weight in the hips, it'll start to flatten them out, right? And with arthritis, you can think of it as like coral reef, and you don't want to break the reef, right? It's just over time you want to be able to generate more range within the joints. So if I wanted to go lower, then I'd turn the block, to the same level, right? And something that you could do is have the left arm underneath the right arm if you're a right-handed person. And then by having the left arm underneath the right, it's going to pick up the right side, which is the dominant side. So the dominant side has a tendency to get shorter just from overly using it throughout your lifespan. So when you look into a mirror, when you're brushing your teeth or you're combing your hair, you'll see that side's lower in most cases. When it's higher, like let's say you're a right-handed person and your right shoulder is higher, you most likely have some scoliosis. Nothing to worry about, but that's why there's an imbalance in the shoulders. As my arms are crossed here, I'm just back, breathing into the pose. There could be effort, there could be motion, but it could be just static. If you find like, that's so much for me, what you could do is you bend the knees, you roll to your left side, and then as you roll to your left side, I'm going to have you sit up, and then as you sit up, you could sit on your blocks if you wanted to. You could sit on the floor. So I like something that's more progressive if I need it, and then if I'm a person that's if I'm really taxed, I like something that's more relaxed at the end of a practice. But sometimes I don't always have the time to relax, depending on my schedule. So I'll fit it in later in the day if that's the case. I'm going to take my left hand out to my right knee. My right hand is behind me. And then just twist like a quarter of the way. Nothing crazy, but just twist a quarter of the way. And then turn forward. And then you're going to take the right hand at the left knee, and the left hand is behind you. And then I'm just twisting a quarter of the way. I'm rising up away from my back hand and my lower back. I'm breathing in, imagining that the shoulders are wider, and then you can turn forward, and your hands could be in any position. They could be up, palms could be up. You could bring your hands together if you'd like to. It's just a gesture of thanks. I hope you had a great class today. I hope the classes are helping build, wellness and vitality, in your life. And again, you can always reach out to me with any questions you may have about anything pertaining to practice. And I'd love to, that's why I'm involved in teaching, and is I want to help more people in their practice. So I have a class tomorrow, if you did not know, and it's from 10 to 11, and it's on Zoom. So you could go to my website, log on, register for the class, and then you get the invite. Then you can also see a calendar. I have a calendar where you could take multiple classes, or you could register. And if you don't take the classes, it's perfectly fine. But then you'd have the invites to take my Zoom classes on Wednesday and Sundays. All right, have a beautiful weekend. Stay well, and hopefully I'll see you in tomorrow's class. Namaste.